A man opens his heart to his lover, just to prove he's not lying. The man's name is Damian Platten, and he's swearing to his beloved Emperor Lucifer, promising to never leave his highness. Though Damian's sincere gaze shows the most devoted vow, Lucifer doesn't believe him. Who knows if you're sincere? The next second, Damian opens his heart. Since your highness doesn't believe me, see it with your own eyes. If you still doubt me, your highness can touch it yourself. Unexpectedly, Lucifer says hands aren't enough to confirm it. Why not open your head and look? While speaking, he stirs Damian's body with his hand. The sensation in his hand of the scorching, boiling blood mixing together is especially tempting, making Lucifer look up, expecting something different from Damian. However, Damian's face is full of misery, crying out Lucifer's name in agony. This kills Lucifer's excitement, because the real Damian never called him that way. This Damian is no longer Damian, and this pleasant dream loses its meaning. As if Damian sensed Lucifer waking up, he's already quietly come to Lucifer's bedside. You're awake, my lord. The first thing Lucifer does after waking is touch Damian. Damian reminds him his hands are cold, but Lucifer asks him to warm them up. The warmth from the back of his hand makes Lucifer feel a strange restlessness. His hand unconsciously reaches toward Damian's head, because he feels the warmth is never enough. Instead, he's getting more and more hungry. Lucifer tries hard to pull Damian into his embrace, but Damian's body tenses up to prevent him, telling Lucifer this will affect the morning schedule. Did your highness have a dream again? You're more clingy than usual. Lucifer holds Damian, softly humming in response. But when it comes to work, Damian's attitude is always firm. Lucifer knows he'll never back down, and this makes Lucifer angry. Suddenly, those words flash through Lucifer's mind. I'll never leave your highness. Since this vow is drilled into my nerves, we must be intimate. Damian's entire body is tense and stiff at first, but now trapped between Lucifer's arms. He can only skillfully accept his current situation, closing his eyes in resignation, not opening them until it's all over. The man wanted to be friends with the prince, but the prince wanted to possess him, just like his father and the current emperor. As mentioned, Damian closes his eyes and accepts reality. Lucifer shares his affection with him. Damian can't help but open his eyes and look at Lucifer. The unease on his face makes Damian regretful. But Damian says nothing comforting, because he knows words alone can't ease his anxiety. And Lucifer wants to solve this through possession. But Damian knows this is wrong. Yeah, he doesn't know when it started. Truly, Damian has been experiencing all kinds of pain. Especially today, the feeling is particularly intense. Yet Damian can do nothing but cooperate. At this moment, Lucifer softly calls Damian, pleading for him to say Lucifer's name. But Damian chooses to ignore it, because that would create false hope and more regret and pain. As time passes, Lucifer becomes even sadder, but this makes Damian feel relieved, thinking if this comforts his highness, whatever he does has meaning, but at the same time feels just disrespectful, because no matter how it's handled, the root problem isn't solved. Instead, it intensifies Damian's inner pain. Fortunately, Lucifer finally agrees to get up. Damian wants to help him bathe, but Lucifer's eyes are full of resentment, ordering Damian to cancel all schedule. I don't need your service either. Damian's heart aches unbearably, but he can only obey Lucifer's command. Actually, Damian knew from that morning glance that today his highness was falling apart. But since first meeting Lucifer, Damian wanted him to inherit the throne more than anyone, and he only wanted to be by his side as Lucifer's most loyal subject and one true friend, wanting to establish their relationship with unbreakable trust, just like his father and the current emperor. Yet Lucifer wasn't interested in any of this, even though he's the heir to the throne, born with admirable qualities. He never appears in public, doesn't associate with officials, and for some reason absolutely refuses to welcome a crown princess. Sure enough, like father, like son, their fathers are like a married couple. Lucifer refuses to marry a crown prince. The reason goes back to when Damian and his father entered the palace to meet the prince. His sister, who went before him, told him the prince was very beautiful, especially those crimson eyes like gemstones. This filled little Damian with anticipation. He wanted to see the beautiful prince as soon as possible. And before Damian entered the bedchamber, his father Kenny reminded him the prince is very sensitive, and to be careful with his words and actions. Damian enjoyed his father's gentle, large hand. He's the emperor's only childhood friend and bodyguard. Though the world calls him general, he and Chancellor William are also called traitors. Damian's family has held the position of general for generations. Even without participating in the rebellion, he'd still be general. But his father helped the emperor commit treason that could doom 9 generations. This made even young Damian understand their deep bond wasn't affected by position and power. It felt like nothing could break their profound relationship. His father then opened the door. But before Damian's eyes appeared a bouquet of roses, though similar to elegant camellias, they somehow seemed especially arrogant. So Damian didn't like them. They were neither beautiful nor fragrant. He preferred little grasses and big trees in nature. If he had to choose a flower he liked, he'd prefer the simple kind. That preference came from childhood, memories of playing with his sister in the fields, seeing roses for the first time. Damian felt vaguely uneasy. Suddenly a rough voice said, "You're here," making Damian startle. Before him was the unrestrained Emperor Kenny's, and the roses from before had actually become a cradle. Damian looked back at his father Kenny. Kenny tilted his head, also confused. Damian didn't know what was happening. The fragrance he'd smelled in the hallway was also gone. Damian was curious why the cradle became roses. He wanted to get closer to see, but his father immediately stopped him. So Damian bowed to apologize for his behavior. However, Kenneth was very displeased. "Kenny, why are you making the kid feel down? You're such a rude guy. My dear nephew Damian is so well behaved. Damian wanted to offer condolences about the Empress passing, but Kenny said that woman is better off dead. Unexpectedly, Kenny glared at him, calling him by name. After Canis stopped talking nonsense, Kenny requested to let Damian meet the prince. Canis looked totally whipped, but still reminded Damian to watch out for the snake. After getting permission, Damian was very happy. He was finally going to meet the prince he'd been thinking about. The man has been feeding his husband milk since childhood, because he wants his husband's future. As mentioned earlier, Damian was about to meet the prince, his future husband. He couldn't be more nervous. Carefully opening the bed curtain, what appeared was a black snake. One look in its eyes, you're his person. The black snake hung with shadow, but then coiled itself back at the head of the bed. Damian looked at the sleeping prince, happily introducing himself, then couldn't help but reach out to touch him, gently squeezing the chubby little face. Somehow he burst into tears from excitement. The prince also felt Damian's touch, opening his eyes for the first time to look at him. Those eyes, crimson as roses, it made Damian feel a chill. The prince wasn't too pleased either. Suddenly Canis appeared, telling Damian the prince's name is Lucifer. How beautiful he is, like a snake. But Kenny interrupted him again, reproaching him for going too far. Damian happily said his highness is looking at him, but Canis said the little guy can't see yet. Kenny retorted, telling him to look closer. Canis looked and he really was staring at him. Then he picked up Lucifer. Father and son stared at each other. Losing the staring contest, Canis handed Lucifer to Damian, then told Damian to feed Lucifer. Damian was so happy he felt honored, and proceeded to feed him properly. Lucifer didn't stop, eating in Damian's arms. Canis and Kenny watched their respect. Kenny remarked that Lucifer looks nothing like Canis. Canis told Kenny to shut up if he can't say anything Kenny nice. Immediately added that the fierce look is similar though. That upset Canis so much he wanted to replace his gender. Their bickering didn't affect Damian's mood for babysitting at all. However, Kenny suggested they should leave, making Damian instantly unhappy. He was so reluctant to part with Lucifer. Canis comforted him, saying he could come alone next time, and didn't need to be so formal. Just call him uncle like before. Damian reluctantly looked back at Lucifer, but eventually left with his father Kenny. His father could tell Damian was disappointed, telling him we'll come see the prince again. Unexpectedly, the prince started crying loudly. The prince only loves being fed by the boy. The boy became the prince's tutor from childhood. The prince started crying as soon as Damian left. Since drinking the milk Damian fed him, he wouldn't drink from anyone else. Not even when Emperor Canis fed him personally. This upset the hot-tempered Canis quite a bit. This brat hasn't had milk in 3 days. What does he want? He was already tiny in the womb. Now he's even lost his baby fat. He didn't even cry when he was born. Why is he so sensitive now? Canis was at his wit's end. Chancellor William suggested, why not let him try taking care of the prince? So Canis immediately ordered Kenny to bring Damian to the palace. This made the usually stone-faced Kenny show a flash of worry. But he still obeyed orders without a word and went home. Legend says the Dawn Spirit closest to God firmly believed God would never abandon him. But when paradise appeared before them, this broken trust became cruel temptation. The Dawn Spirit, loved by all, blinded by jealousy, became hungry for slaughter, becoming the proud serpent of hell. So God cruelly threw him into the sea of fire and sulfur to suffer forever. After reading about the first demon's tragic fate, Damian couldn't help but quietly sob, because the prince's name is the same as the spirit's, making Damian feel the prince suffered those same things. So Damian made up his mind. No matter what happens, he will never leave the prince. This determination became a noble enchanting flame. Damian carefully held it up, plucking the flower decisively, then holding it tightly in his arms. I will never leave your highness. Kenny came to Damian's room, seeing the tear stains in his son's eye, feeling even more uneasy. Kenny gently took away the book, calling Damian to wake up. Damian opened his eye. Father, why did you come for me during work hours? Kenny replied, we're gonna see Prince now. Damian happily jumped up immediately, hoping to see him longer this time. However, Kenny looked worried. Damian asked his father what was wrong. Kenny told Damian this time would be very, very long, then slowly took Damian back to the palace. The prince seemed like he'd never had milk before, drinking nonstop in Damian's arms. Canis finally breathed a sigh of relief, but Kenny let out a sigh. William approved of both their reactions, writing the decree that Damian would care for the prince from now on. Though all this was for the prince and peace in the demon realm, it also seemed destined. 12-year-old Damian became the prince's tutor. William comforted Kenny that Damian would surely inherit the general position.